your Earth's keeper, which refers to each of our roles in maintaining the well-being of the Earth, which is not only our home, but the home of every living organism as well. The study of life sciences enables us to contribute to the protection of our planet and increase the quality of all living beings that reside here.
Life Sciences Day is an annual event, with 2022 being the second year that it's being held. The purpose of Life Sciences Day is to showcase the opportunities within the Department of Life Sciences and to highlight the department staff and their research. This event also features department-related clubs and professionals in the field, as well as NGOs, in order to further encourage undergraduate and postgraduate students, like some of you watching, to further your careers in life sciences.
Today, we are honored to have 7 speakers, each from varying fields of the life sciences, such as biochemistry, biology, and environmental science. Today, they will be giving presentations regarding their area of expertise, ways you can get involved, and how you can also excel as a life sciences student.
My name is 𝐂𝐚𝐲𝐿 Rampassad. I'm the Department of Life Sciences representative for years 1 and 2.
And my name is 𝐿 Miraj, and I'm the Department of Life Sciences representative for years 3 and 4, and we will be your host for today. To begin, we will have a welcome address from our Head of Department of Life Sciences, Professor Judith Gobin. Professor Gobin, whenever you're ready, it's yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Amy and Nishali. As head of department, I wish to bring everyone very warm greetings and welcome you to this activity of the FST Student Council group. We are celebrating Life Sciences Day 2020. Of course, it's quite fitting to be highlighting today's theme, which is Be Your Earth's Keeper. At the same time, of course, we are all celebrating Earth Day. So happy Earth Day to everyone. My simple message to you is that we can make a difference. Remember, we are purely custodians of this planet. The various activities that we engage in on Earth have immediate, direct, and indirect impacts. In other words, this is not a dress rehearsal. This is the real show. Whatever we do today affects our living Earth, it affects our space, it affects our own resources, and of course, our quality of life. Let us change the way we operate. Let us reuse, recycle, move away from single-use plastics, less chemicals, even in our personal care items, in our laundry detergents, in our gardens, and so on. These are very simple things that we can all do. My special interest is, of course, the ocean and the seas, and of course, all of these terrestrial activities on land impact on the sea and reduce the ability of the ocean to generate and sustain its resources. I like to think of it as if we're keeping a clean ocean. At the same time, we need to be looking after our Earth. Today, I wish to challenge FST Student Council's team to identify some specific activities to help us on the campus engage the campus community along these lines. Let us think of some activities that we can engage in that will really impact positively on the way we're treating our Earth. Small changes can indeed make a big difference. It is, of course, the overall cumulative impact. I applaud the FST Student Council's team for organizing this activity, and I wish you a very productive and enjoyable session this afternoon. Happy Earth Day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gobin, for your warm introduction to our event. We will now move on to the presentations from our speakers. Our first speaker is Dr. Sapphira Rampassad, who you may already be familiar with if you're a biochemistry student. Dr. Rampassad is a senior lecturer in biochemistry at the University of the West Indies. She is a PhD graduate of the University of the West Indies and has participated in multiple international fellowships and training. Her research interests include the application of molecular ecology tools for studying population genetics and genetic diversity, the innovation, development, and assessment of molecular approaches for pathogen characterization, the innovation and development of biochemical methods for bioactive compound screening, and the characterization of plant diseases and pathogen profiling and identification of epidemic-associated factors affecting plant diseases. I will now pass you on to Dr. Rampassad.
Afternoon, everybody. And I'd like to wish everyone a warm welcome to this afternoon session. And before I start, I want to congratulate everybody on the team for doing a fantastic organization effort. It really was a lot to pull off. And you can be part of my team any day. So I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. And we want to do just a very brief presentation. All right, so I want to introduce you, if you don't already know, about this subject area called biochemistry. And it is fundamental, basically, to everything in life sciences. It's interdisciplinary, and we're basically using biochemistry to understand our world one molecule at a time. All right, so I will let you know, I will admit it, that the path to becoming a biochemist is a difficult one, but it's very rewarding. Biochemistry can be considered to be the chemistry of life. I'm going to put a little bit extra on that. It's the biochemistry of life and death and everything in between. So what it means to be alive, you can study that via a program in biochemistry. So it's not just biology and chemistry. As I said, it's interdisciplinary. You have elements of molecular biology, molecular genetics, microbiology, organic and inorganic chemistry. So you might be thinking, well, what makes biochemistry different from biology, different from maybe any other biological science? So at the molecular level, this is where biochemistry begins, right? Some science subjects may start at maybe part of the organism, maybe the entire organism or groups of organisms, but biochemistry starts at the molecular level. So it means, therefore, that we would like to study different micro and macromolecules in the cell. And you may be familiar with proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. We are interested in the structure, the composition of these biomolecules, how they are involved in different biochemical processes in the cell, and what value do they bring to the life of an organism. And a lot of these processes are quite similar, whether they be in bacteria or humans. So if we look at this schematic, you'll see that we're actually just above the atomic level in terms of what we study. And you will see that we are, in fact, fundamental to understanding how cells operate, how organs operate, how organisms, populations, and ecosystems work together in order to survive. Right? All right. So at the molecular level, we aim to study bioenergetics and metabolism. Biochemistry, in terms of energy metabolism, basically discusses all the chemical processes of an organism in terms of how energy is utilized, how energy is generated. And for example, the reason why you should be interested in something like this is because it has a direct link to brain aging and a number of different diseases, not just neurodegenerative ones. So you can have ATP, right, which is required for energy, and you can have ATP, which is also required as part of the building blocks of DNA. And I know it sounds like I'm just randomly calling out letters from the alphabet, but all these letters mean very important things. Communication. Another aspect of biochemistry seeks to understand how cells communicate with each other. In addition, intracellularly, there are a number of signal cascade, signal transduction mechanisms that are important to telling the cell and telling those biomolecules in the cell what they are supposed to do. So one example would be signal mechanisms to tell the cell what developmental processes need to be engaged now, and what sort of repair mechanisms are required because of a certain type of damage to the cell, right? So, and you thought you would overthink things. Look at this schematic. Look at this. How fantastic. Look at this. These little arrows all indicate the thought processes that happens in the side of the cell in order to make a decision about whether the cell should die or not, right? It is absolutely exquisite. One decision to make, and this is the kind of communication that happens inside of the cell. Okay, we're still at the molecular level. Now you'd find a recurring theme in life sciences is structure and function, or location to function. Why are these biomolecules, why do they have this particular structure? Why do they have these specific bonds? Why must these biomolecules be in a particular shape? It is because structure is related to function, and location of this biomolecule in the cell is related to function. So you have this relationship that is critical to understand how these biomolecules are functioning in the cell and where they're located in the cell. So one example I have here is lipase or esterase. How do you know which enzyme is a lipase and which enzyme is an esterase? If you look at the function, they may not seem that different, but if you look at the structure, we have specific aspects of the structure that would let us know which of these diagrams actually are lipases, and which of them are esterases. All right, so having studied biochemistry at the tertiary level at our department, what sort of job opportunities are there working as a biochemist? So we want to talk about industry for a little bit. What do we mean by industry in terms of working as a biochemist? Industry is a broad term that refers to different companies and organizations that work to provide a particular service or product for the community, for the public. And there are actually different roles that the biochemist can take up in industry. And these would include what is listed here on the right side of the slide. In addition, you can be more specialized in your studies. You can do additional training where you would be able to function in a university lab, in sales and marketing, drug development, agriculture, education, forensic sciences. But it means that you have to take your undergraduate degree higher, where you would then specialize in different aspects of biochemistry. Okay. All right. What if you want to do research? You're interested in research in biochemistry. What does that mean? It is a huge commitment on the part of the biochemistry student to decide on a career in biochemistry research. And what do we mean by commitment? We mean that you have to spend several years of your life dedicated to working in the lab, forsaking all others. And the idea is to design an experiment where you produce a solution or you come up with a solution to a specific problem. And generally speaking, the responsibilities of a biochemist as a researcher, usually you would be involved in detecting or isolating and analyzing specific biomolecules. You would have to plan your experiments to understand how these biomolecules function and what effects these biomolecules have on a particular aspect of the cell's functioning. You would be required to write technical reports. You must publish in reputable academic journals. You have to stay abreast of the latest biochemistry research. And this is ongoing day to day. The field is advancing, and you have to keep abreast of all the developments in the field. You must also be able to communicate your findings to your colleagues and other professionals within your research institute and globally. So science communication is very important, whether you're doing biochemistry research or any other kind of research, really. You would also be required to get funding for your research. You can't do your experiments if you have no money to carry out the experiments. You have to be able to get funding. What do we mean by funding? You have to buy equipment and supplies and reagents. You may need to hire some research assistants. You may need to hire field assistants as well, depending on the type of research. So funding is very, very important. It therefore means that no man is an island when you're doing biochemistry research. You have to have a team of researchers working with you to help in training, to help in supervision, to help in writing up your experiments. And your team may consist of postgraduate students, postdocs, lab technicians, lab assistants, and you can have undergraduate researchers as well. So the schematic on the right gives you a little idea of what is involved in being a researcher, whether it's in biochemistry or biology. And it is very, very rewarding. It requires a lot of dedication and commitment. And you see here the proportion of papers in the top 100 research areas. And here we are, almost taking up a quarter of this pie chart, biochemistry and molecular biology. So there is always something new and exciting to investigate and to discover. And as long as you're committed to the field, you will be very much rewarded. So I have one question for those of you who are paying attention. How does a cell know when it's time to die? How do we know? And that's the end of my little presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Rampassad. Answers should be coming in the chat soon. So thank you again for your insightful presentation today. We had one question for you, but you took it completely with respect to the career opportunities and research of biochemistry students. So it's really refreshing to be reminded that we aren't limited with the opportunities that we have as biochemistry students. I find that a lot of people make it out like that. So we kind of tend to think that we're limited with respect to what we can do. So it's very refreshing to hear that. Thank you once again. I'm sure you've inspired many biochemistry students watching. So next we have Dr. Ladina Kanhai, who you probably know if you've done a marine or coastal ecosystems course and or science communication. So Dr. Kanhai is a marine scientist that is currently based at the Department of Life Sciences, UWI St. Augustine. Her research is multidisciplinary and it is focused on understanding human impact on species, communities, and ecosystems to advance the development of context-specific interventions that will contribute to the conservation of biodiversity. She has conducted research in Trinidad and Tobago, the Arctic Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, and the Caribbean Sea. Dr. Kanhai has represented Trinidad and Tobago on the Scientific Advisory Committee on Marine Litter and Microplastics from 2019 to 2022. She is currently one of the lead authors on the Grenada National Ecosystem Assessment. Most recently, Dr. Kanhai published on the issue of marine debris and plastic pollution in the Caribbean large marine ecosystem. Her latest research is focused on the human dimension of plastic pollution in Trinidad and Tobago. At the UWI, she teaches undergraduate courses that are focused on coastal and marine ecosystems, science communication, and environmental impact assessments. She also serves as a member on several local, regional, and international working groups and committees that are focused on marine conservation and pollution. Beyond research, Dr. Kanhai is involved in science communication and outreach. Welcome, Dr. Kanhai.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you guys can see me and hear me properly. I am just going to share my screen. All right. Yes. Okay. All right. All good? Can I proceed?
Yep, all good.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks very much, Nishali. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. As you've already heard, my name is Ladina Kanhai, and I'm a marine scientist that is based here at the Department of Life Sciences. And I just want to share a little bit in terms of my journey. So my fascination with the natural environment really started in my backyard. That was where I became curious and intrigued about the natural environment. And it is that passion that really propelled me to study it at the university level. Now, I was lucky at the university level in my third year, all of our courses had field trips. And so we were at the beaches, in the rivers, in the forests, in the swamps. And the issue that caught my attention while I was at university was this issue of pollution. So when I graduated from UWI with my undergraduate degree, the first thing I did was that I went off to the Point of Bay Wildfire Trust. You'll hear from them later. And I worked there, and my work was really focused on science communication. But then right after that, I came back to university and I started research in the Caroni Swamp in a very small boat, right? And what we were interested in at that time would have been chemical contaminants in the swamp, in the various environmental phases. So we wanted to understand whether these chemical contaminants were accumulating in the sediments, in the oysters, and the catfish. We wanted to understand whether these contaminants posed a threat to the organisms that live there, as well as did they pose a threat to human consumers of these shellfish and fish. And so from very early on, my research started focusing on the impact of humans on the natural environment. So after that, I went on and then still continuing on in this general field of environmental pollution, I had the opportunity to do some work on microplastic pollution now in the Atlantic and the Arctic Ocean. And again, the fundamental questions there were that we were trying to understand whether these tiny plastic particles, were they accumulating in different phases? Did they pose a threat to the organisms that live there? With this scientific information, you can then now try to develop context-specific solutions, okay? Apart from understanding how we as humans impact the natural environment, another issue that caught my attention would have been understanding what drives people's behavior. Okay, so I started some of this research with the late Professor Dave Chady in maybe 2014, 2015. And at that time, we were looking at the issue as it relates to tsunamis. What did people know? What were their attitudes? What were their practices as it relates to tsunamis here in Trinidad and Tobago? More recently, I've continued on that path, and I'll talk about that project in a little bit as it relates to plastic pollution. So the point I'm trying to make here is that when we think about, marine science, it's very, very multidisciplinary. You work with people, I collaborate with people from multiple disciplines, And I'm very lucky because my work allows me to get out there into the field to collect samples. I come back into the lab to process those samples. And then, as Dr. Rampassad mentioned, it's very important when you're doing any sort of science to be able to communicate that science to the general public. And so science communication forms a very important part of what I do. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is interacting with young people. And I'm very fortunate that with the job that I have, I get to teach young people, we get to teach them about the coastal environment, about the marine environment, about environmental impact, science communication, that sort of thing. So that's what I wanted to say in a nutshell about the type of work that I do. Now, when Nishali invited me to deliver this presentation, she said to me, can I also talk about opportunities, what opportunities exist? And so when I talk about opportunities, I'm not going to tell you to apply to organization X, Y, or Z, or apply for scholarship X, Y, or Z. What I want to talk about is how do you, become aware about these opportunities? How do you grasp these opportunities? I don't know if you all can see it, but on my desk in the back here, I have my 2 theses from my MPhil and from my PhD, and I actually put my laptop on top of that, right? So it's a foundation. The first thing I want to say to you is that your university degrees are really meant to be a foundation. What I hope is that students and graduates of the University of the West Indies, that you have this growth mindset, that you understand that, yes, I now have a foundation, but I need to keep building on that foundation. I need to keep upskilling. There are skills that I don't yet have. Even after my degrees, to this day, I keep upskilling, right? And so that's one of the first things I want to share with you. If you have that growth mindset, and this growth mindset, Carol Dweck wrote a book about it, you will then start to be on the lookout for these opportunities, okay? And it will be an active search for opportunities. So I speak from my own experience, and the image that you're seeing in the middle of the screen there, in our house, we buy the newspaper every day, right? So we have the Express, the Guardian, and the Newsday, right? And so every day I find myself looking through the newspaper, right? Probably old school, because when I ask students, are you guys reading the newspaper? I get, low responses, right? But the point is, one day I was reading the newspaper and I saw a full page ad for this, scholarship that would allow you to pursue a diploma in global leadership. And I thought, okay, that sounds very interesting. Maybe I'll apply for this, right? Now, the courses were a little bit intimidating. These were not courses that I had done before. And so I thought, okay, this is a good opportunity to upskill. And so on the last day that the application was due, I put in I submitted my application. And then lo and behold, they came back to me and they said, okay, so you are one of the people in the Caribbean that we've chosen for this thing. And the courses that I'm doing, these are things that are out of my field. So they are talking about things like design thinking. The current course that I'm doing is tackling finance in the social sector. I did one on educating and changing times, right? So very important courses, new skills, building on new skills. But the point I wanted to make here is that you've got to be on the lookout for these opportunities, right? The other example I use is from 2019. So in 2019, when I came back with my PhD, the Institute of Marine Affairs, they invited me to deliver 2 lectures. So one was to their staff, and the other one was a public lecture, right? And so it meant that the people at the IMA, they knew that there was somebody in Trinidad and Tobago that had done work on microplastics, right? And so when the call came from the United Nations Environment Program to submit a representative from Trinidad and Tobago to this committee that Nishali mentioned on marine litter and microplastics, the nomination actually came from the IME, and it was supported by Professor Gobin, right? The reason I use this as an example is because sometimes opportunities will come from your professional networks. And so it's important as a student, as a graduate, to build these networks, right? Because maybe had I not done those presentations, maybe they wouldn't have known that there was somebody that had done work in this area. Okay, another opportunity that allowed me to build my networks internationally would have been the 𝐻𝐸xpedition program. And this would have been a voyage around the world. No, I didn't go around the world. I just went on leg 4 from Antigua to Bonaire and then Bonaire to Aruba. But the point was that 𝐻𝐸xpedition has this international network. So not only am I connected with people in the Caribbean, but people internationally as well. Right. And the very last opportunity I'll talk about, situation I'll talk about is in 2021. So in 2021, we were in the middle of the pandemic and conferences, people were not traveling to conferences. Most conferences were being held online. There was the Commonwealth Science Conference, and people, so that meant researchers from all across the Commonwealth countries, they were attending this conference. And what the organizers said is that they were going to issue a couple of grants. I think it was 5 or 6 grants. And what they wanted the teams to do is to be able to collaborate. So they wanted to foster collaboration between countries. And you guys are actually the first people to see this advertisement. We only got it this week, right? And so still along the lines of what I was doing with Professor Chedi, trying to understand what drives people's behavior as it relates to environmental issues, I decided to reach out to an environmental psychologist who was at the time based in the UK. Now she's in Norway. And what we did was that we jointly submitted this application for this grant. We were very successful and we got the grant. And so, by early next week, we will be launching this survey, trying to understand basically what is driving people's behavior as it relates to plastic pollution. We know that knowledge is not the only thing, but we want to understand what are those other factors. The very cool thing about this survey is that Digicel has said to us that they're willing to sponsor 2 prizes, one to Trinidad, one to a resident in Trinidad and one to a resident in Tobago. And so the winners of this prize will of course have complimentary access to mobile service for a year, which I think is fantastic. But the reason I use that last example is because you've got to be willing to step out of your comfort zone for opportunities as well. So even though I'm not an environmental psychologist, I was willing to collaborate with one to work on a joint project. So I hope that those little snippets that I shared would put you in the frame of mind so that you would actively be seeking out opportunities on different platforms. You would have this growth mindset that encourages you to upskill, to want to keep upskilling, and that you will, grow your networks, your professional networks. So I'll stop there. I think I went over time, but I'll stop there for now. Quite happy to take questions at the end. Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Kanhai, for your comprehensive presentation regarding your marine research. We have one question for you. You have extensive experience with marine expeditions. What was a typical day like for you at sea, and how can students access these opportunities to become more involved in marine research?
Great. Okay, so Nishali, that's a difficult question because every expedition was different, and a typical day, for instance, in the Arctic is not going to be the same as in the Caribbean Sea, and also the size of the vessel very much dictates what is happening. So the icebreakers that I went on, very stable platforms, no issues. When we were sailing in the Caribbean Sea, lots of issues, right? Beautiful conditions, but you can imagine. But for instance, a typical day in the Arctic for us, we would get up, and if that was a day when we were heading out to take samples on an ice floe, we would have to get in a helicopter, and the helicopter would take us, to an ice floe. We would get off, start drilling for ice, bring that ice back into the, onto the helicopter and then into the ship. But then you would have lab days. So you would have days when you're literally just melting ice, filtering water, that sort of thing. So, when we think of expeditions, yes, it's lovely going out there and collecting samples, but you spend a substantial amount of time in the lab processing those samples. Yeah, same thing for the Caribbean trip, out there in the hot sun, taking, whatever it is, getting the samples, but then again, you have times when you process the samples. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yes, that's really good. Thank you. That was very interesting. So thank you once again for your presentation, and we can move on.
Okay, so for our next presentation, we have Mr. Ryan 𝐿𝐲𝐻. Mr. 𝐿𝐲𝐻 is an award-winning sustainability and climate change consultant that develops and executes environmental programs for Caribbean companies and governments. Over his 9-year career, he has been critical to the success of projects with a combined value of $17 million in the areas of environmental science, policy, and finance. He is an honors graduate of the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, where he read for his first degree in environmental and natural resource management. Presently, Mr. 𝐿𝐲𝐻 sits on the boards of several environmental NGOs and is the director of the consulting firm Advisors Next Door Limited. I will now pass you on to Mr. 𝐿𝐲𝐻.
Good afternoon, everyone. And Amy, thank you so much for that introduction. Happy Earth Day to everyone viewing at home, streaming online, and of course, greetings to everyone here on the panel with me. So as you may have heard, my name is Mr. Ryan 𝐿𝐲𝐻, and I am a climate change consultant. I have my own climate change consulting company called Advisors Next Door, and I've been asked to do 3 things here for you today. I've been asked to introduce you into the world of climate change consulting. I've been asked to tell you why that it is important to the planet and to people. And I've been also asked to talk to you about some opportunities that await for you to get into this field. Now, in order to achieve those 3 things, I believe that the best way to do that is through storytelling and imagination. So what I want to do is I'm going to ask for your consent to give me 2 minutes to paint a picture in your mind that will help put everything into perspective. So please come along with me as we imagine. I want you to imagine yourself at home in your room. You're lying down on your bed, your door slightly ajar, and you're taking a nap. You're trying to sleep. And as you sleep, a loved one walks by, let's say your mom, and she peeps inside and sees you lying on your bed, and she decides, you know what? She's going to cover you with a thinly veiled, a thin blanket, right? All good intentions, trying to make sure you're comfortable, puts you there. A minute goes by, and then your father walks by, peeps inside, and adds another blanket. Another minute goes by, and then your brother, and then your sister, and another loved one, and another loved one, and this continues on for 70 minutes. Now, at that point in time, you are overheating. Your body is drenched with sweat, and you wake up suddenly from your sleep. I want you to tell me in the chat what you would do. What is the first thing you do? What is the first way you would react when you wake up and realize that you are covered in layers and layers of blankets? I'll come back to those responses in a second. Of course, you are sweating. And I share this with you because this is an apt metaphor for what we are doing with the planet. You see, over the past 70 years, our activities, because of our good intentions of escaping poverty and socioeconomic development, we have used things that we love, fossil fuels, which have generated blankets of greenhouse gases that cover the earth. And when Mother Earth sweats, however, just like we would, bad things start to happen. The ice caps melt, sea levels rise, and we experience drastic changes in the Earth's climate. Extreme weather events become more frequent and severe. When we sweat, we get beads of sweat on our body. When Mother Earth sweats, we get hurricanes, droughts, and floods. And all of the things in the natural environment and that we depend on as a society become under direct threat. And just as you would overheat and feel warm in your bed, and you would start to sweat, of course, you don't sweat equally or evenly. There are parts of your body, for example, under your arms or your palms or even your feet that might sweat more than others. And so too is the case with climate change. As the Earth heats up, the risks of climates, these hurricanes, these droughts, these floods, they are not equally distributed across the planet, even though the entire planet is warming. Low-income countries and small islands, just like our very own Trinidad and Tobago, are more at risk than others. Now, if your body gets too warm under that pile of blankets, you are subject to possibly experiencing organ failure and other sorts of damage. And so too, if the planet heats up too much and there's a critical number of 1.5 degrees for small islands, so too could we see catastrophic cascades in how the planet functions. It is projected that if it is that temperatures exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius increase compared to 1952, we might experience the loss of coral reefs. 90% of the world's coral reefs might die out through bleaching. And we expect, based on our current trajectory, that we will cross that threshold in anywhere as soon as 12 years to 30 years. Can you imagine that you could watch a show like Finding Nemo, right? Where you have all these wonderful diversity of coral reefs and fish, and we could still imagine a coral reef as a real thing. But your children might look at Finding Nemo the way that we look at Jurassic Park. In 30 years, they might not exist. They might be fossils, something that has gone extinct. So when I talk about climate change, and you have this image of yourself under these blankets, I hope it puts into perspective a little bit about why it's important to address and what can be done. Now, as climate change consultants, we take climate action across 5 domains. And I'm looking at the chat here. I have my phone next to me and I'm seeing the different types of suggestions you all had. I asked you all a minute ago, what would you do if you woke up and found yourselves covered in blankets? And let me tell you, the same things that you would do as a person in concept, in career, it's the same things that we do as climate change consultants on behalf of companies and governments. I'm seeing that some of you say you would take the blankets off, you would remove the layers. And if you aim to remove the emissions from the atmosphere and prevent others from going up there, in climate change, we call that climate mitigation. I see some people talk about putting on the fan or wiping their brow. That's the first thing that they would do. They would do things to adjust to the higher temperatures. In climate change, we call that climate change adaptation. I saw someone talk about having a little bit more heat endurance, having tolerance, preparing your body to endure so much, the weight of so much blankets. Well, if you're preparing yourself and anticipating the future, we call that climate resilience. There's some people who would have said, we'll tell our parents to stop, tell our loved ones to stop adding to the emissions, and to make sure that their good intentions are equally distributed to everyone in the house and not just us, right? In the jargon of climate change, we call that climate justice. And some people would have said, you know what, I would just lock my door. And if I have to get money to pay for a lock, that financing is what we call climate finance. These are the 5 domains of climate action that climate change consultants work in, and the ways that you as graduates can get involved. Now, you might recognize that these things traverse not just the environmental or scientific aspects, but also social and economic aspects as well. And this means that you can actually enter into a field of climate change from different angles. You could come in from law, from engineering, from social sciences. But I want to tell you here today, on Earth Day, at Life Sciences Day, that graduates with life science degrees have, as Ladina mentioned, the right foundational knowledge for a career in climate change consulting, and especially here with my company at Advisors. I want to share with you just 3 examples of projects that we are currently working on so that you could see where you might be able to fit in. In the areas of climate change resilience, we are evaluating nature-based solutions to build climate resilience in Jamaica, Grenada, and Dominican Republic. We are working with communities to show them how ecosystems and nature could be used to prepare and help them bounce back from natural disasters. In mitigation, we are using industrial ecology approaches to transform solid waste into net zero compost right here in Trinidad and Tobago. And in terms of finance, we are working with development banks to develop environmental, social, financial, and governance indicators to enhance their performance. So for you as a life science student, your career options can take you very far in consulting. You may not always be in a lab. You might find yourself in communities at the cutting edge of industry or in the boardroom of banks. And it starts, of course, with the foundational knowledge that you have. I need to give you a caveat though, because you cannot just jump out of school and go straight into consulting. If only life were that easy. You see, consulting and climate change consulting specifically is not an entry-level job. The unfortunate reality is that the majority of you coming out are just beginning your journeys. Our previous speaker talked about a growth mindset, and it's going to be a very hard road for a lot of you. When you get into your careers and you get into the world of work, you are going to find that it's going to become very hard to find your footing. And when you do, it might become even more challenging to get what I call productive years of experience. Productive years or of work experience isn't just filing or showing up to work. It is having the experiences that allow you to build the right network, the right skills, and get the right support to help you become a consultant with a track record of success that companies and governments and experts will come to you for advice for. So it's not an entry-level job, and it's something that requires a lot of productive experience. But of course, how do you get that, right? And this is a concern for me at Advisors, because I know that climate change is an intergenerational issue. It is not a problem or a challenge that I could solve in my lifetime by myself. It's one that requires a new generation, your generation, to continue the work that we've started and we continue to do. We need young, bright, enthusiastic people to join the fight. And we need to create opportunities for you all to get those productive experiences. The previous speaker would have talked about general advice and not wanting to advocate for something specific. And I'm going to depart from that, and I'm going to advocate for something very specific. You see, at Advisors, we have created an internship program that we call our Advisors Academy Mentorship Program. It is a specific program that has been designed by myself and my colleagues, where we select 8 participants every year, and over 9 weeks, we pour into them our knowledge, our expertise, our networks across 5 pillars of development to help them become high quality professionals who can impact the discipline of consulting, and specifically the environmental sector. We are looking to establish the framework for your career success, and right now that program is open. We are receiving applications until the 20th of May. But what are we looking for? Our mentees are selected based on 3 real things, right? It's their potential to thrive under the rigors of the program. 9 weeks is a very intensive time. We want to make sure that they have a true passion for what they're doing, because this sector is tough, make no mistake about it. And it's going to be the passion for what you do that drives you on a lot of those days. And of course, you need to have a willingness to learn, because what you're going to be presented with is an incredible learning opportunity. Now, of course, because climate change is diverse, anyone could apply. And in fact, we do not discriminate based on years of experience, level of degree, or anything of the sort. But to give you some comfort as life sciences graduates, I want to reflect on the previous cohorts, the graduating class of last year for us, and show you that their fields of study contain a lot of life sciences areas, right? We're talking about science and sustainable technology, resource management, geography, biology, chemical engineering, and more. And when you're in this program, we take you through things step by step. You go through a multidimensional program aimed at partnering you and your cohort to build your professional, personal, and technical capacities through these plenary sessions. I call on my network, my fellow colleagues who believe in supporting the next generation of change makers, and they come in and they spend time with you to share their stories, to give you advice, to give you guidance, to go from the seats that you are currently sitting in to the seats that you aspire to sit in. And of course, we wrap up all of that knowledge with our strategic partners to allow you to put your knowledge and skills to use and do what we call our capstone project. So here on the screen, I have a wonderful example. And this is from our two of our graduates from last year. They would have undertaken some original research in collaboration with the Cropper Foundation to tie off their skills. And their work was so good that it was featured in the newspapers last year in 2020 in the run-up to COP26. It was featured in our national environmental reporting. And I'm very, very proud to say that it was accepted and is pending publication with the Journal of Caribbean and Environmental Sciences and Renewable Energy. So by this point, I know that you are ready to jumpstart your career in climate change consulting. You're ready to make money while making a difference. And I'm going to tell you that if you need to do that, you need to do three things. You need to follow us on social media. You need to download our prospectus from our website to learn all the intricacies of the program. And you need to apply, of course, to our program before May 20th. And as I close and I say thank you, I'll leave you with one last question for a special prize. My question to you all is, what are the 5 domains of climate action? Please leave it in the chat. And I look forward to fielding your questions at the panel discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. 𝐂𝐚𝐿, thank you so much for your insight regarding careers and opportunities in the field of environmental science. I feel like it's really important, especially because a lot of people, they're not aware of the opportunities that life sciences offers them. And it's mostly thought of just like as degrees that you go into just research or probably teaching. So thank you so much. And I think a lot of us would be eager to take on that internship as well. So thank you.
Welcome back.
We have one question for you today. What advice would you give graduates looking to establish themselves in this field? And once you establish yourself, how do you excel career-wise?
Okay, Amy, thanks for that. That's a really great question. And I want to give you one of a handful of secrets that I will be sharing with my academy cohort, but I'll share number one with you, right? And this one is that I need all of you to understand as you start your careers, as you embark on your careers in life sciences or otherwise, that the most important decisions that will be made about your career and about your success will be made by people who are in a room that you are not in. These decisions on whether you start your first job, that you get this internship, or that you get this promotion will be made by people in a room when you are not there to promote yourself and that you are not there to defend yourself against any sorts of biases, rumors, or decisions. So what this means is that it should be your topmost prerogative to ensure that you live rent-free in the minds of these decision makers. And how you do that is by two things or two ways, right? The first is that you need to create a brand of excellence around yourself, right? That draws attention to you, right? I like to think about it like a mousetrap, right? A cheese on a trap, right? And the cheese is your excellence. And you can do that in a couple of ways. You can not just be the person that gives 100%, but you give 150%. You need to excel and get so much prestige and distinction that, it's attractive. People turn their heads at you. Or if you aren't inclined to be 200% and excellent, you need to be persistent. You need to be the hardest working person that people say, hey, you know what? This person is consistent. If you do those two things, you will raise your prestige and you will attract people to look at you. That's the cheese. And the trap, and this is the second thing that you need to do in order to live rent-free in somebody's mind, is that you need to be able to form meaningful relationships with the people that are attracted to your brilliance, right? You need to be able to have such a good relationship with persons that not only do they know you, know what you're capable of, and know what your potential is, but they are willing, when they are in those rooms that you are not in, to advocate on your behalf and say, hey, oh, this is a promotion opportunity. Well, let me tell you, I know Amy Ramdat, right? And she's the best person for this job, right? So if you're able to do that, if you're able to understand that your number one mission entering the world of work, entering into the environmental sector and hoping to succeed in the environmental sector is making sure that you have a strong relationship with key decision makers, I think that is the best piece of advice that I would leave for you. The specific techniques on how to do that, that's something I go into more detail with our mentees, and maybe in another discussion we'll have those conversations as well with LifeSci. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much again, Mr. Siu, for both the presentation and for answering all our questions today. So for our next presenter, we have Mr. Javon Baron. So Mr. Baron, while he was studying for his BSc degree, a double major in biology and chemistry, he became interested in the field of natural products. As an undergraduate student, he worked on projects focused on identifying novel therapeutic agents from our local flora and fauna. Currently, he is pursuing an MPhil in biochemistry at the Department of Life Sciences under the supervision of Dr. Ladina Kanhai. His research involves the characterization and biological activities of host-defense peptides in skin secretions from frogs in Trinidad. So far, he has attended several local and international conferences to present his research findings. He was fortunate to visit on 2 occasions the laboratory of his co-supervisor, Professor 𝐂𝐚𝐫𝐭𝐡'𝐬 at Ulster University in Northern Ireland, where he developed his skill set in specialized techniques. Moreover, he has been the postgraduate students representative at the Department of Life Sciences for the past 2 years, and he's an appointed demonstrator on several undergraduate courses. Mr. Baron, I'll pass it on to you now.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Javon Baron, and I'm going to give you a short talk about my research in the Department of Life Sciences. So today, I'm going to talk about host defense peptides in the skin secretions of 2 leptodactylus frogs from Trinidad. So as we know, worldwide, there are aspects of diseases to be treated. Most recently, COVID-19 that infected the world with limited treatment options. Looking past that, the immunocompromised population were more susceptible to disease due to afflictions of the immune system, followed by persons that suffer from diabetes and cancer. So prior to the pandemic, antibiotic-resistant microbes were at the forefront with increased use of last resort drugs for infections other than the use of conventional antibiotics. So with increased bioprospecting from all aspects of nature, the marine environment, fauna, flora, it allowed for more potential therapeutic agents to be discovered and introduced into the pipeline, expanding their applications. So targeting antibiotic-resistant microbes, over 1,000 peptides have been reviewed from frogs and are readily available in terms of their sequences. So in advancing studies for therapeutic agents, improvements in drug delivery and clinical applications, but what makes frogs such a model species for drug discovery and what the frogs of Trinidad and Tobago can contribute? So why studying frogs in Trinidad and Tobago? There are more than 36 species present, some of which are cryptic, meaning that they are identified to that of the genus level. There are several frog families, the Buffidae, Phylomedusae, Aromobacteriae, Leptodactylia, Aranidae. Some frogs are endemic, meaning that they can only be found in Trinidad and or in Tobago. And they're used as model species for various areas of research: biochemistry, which is my focus, genetics, environmental toxicology, biodiversity, and molecular biology. So indirect threats to frog populations are habitat destruction and overall climate change. So these are like the environmental factors, but frog skin secretions are a rich source of biologically active compounds, which is more useful for direct threats, such as protection against predation from birds and snakes. Spiders is an example where they are successfully preyed upon. And disease such as the chytrid fungus, which causes keratinization of that organ, which is the skin, which prevents that essential gaseous exchange, is found in frogs in Trinidad and Tobago. But yet such levels of disease is not reported. So this leaves us to speculate that your protection is conferred by the means of their skin, which comprises of glands that house compounds to deter such instances of predation and disease. So in frog families, there are a range of chemical compounds that can be found in their skins. So in Trinidad, we usually associate the cane toad, which is visually unappealing and is an example of the member of the family Bophidae. The cane toad consists of a cocktail of compounds where non-peptides, specifically alkaloids, that target the gastrointestinal system of dogs. So that's why when dogs interact or pets interact with these frogs, they would tend to display that foaming at the mouth or excess salivation. So we now look at the Trinidad monkey frog. Its vibrant color made it a bit more appealing, and their skin secretions contain peptide components, example that of host defense peptides, which overall is a bit beneficial due to its applications. So exploring the local biodiversity and targeting sources for therapeutic agents in Trinidad, the frogs, for example, the phylum Medusa trinitatis, has presented more than 28 peptides reported by 𝐋𝐢𝐿 et al. In 2018. So this was the first frog locally sourced, as other species previously studied were not locally sourced, though found in Trinidad and Tobago. So there's a peptide family called dermoceptins, which is characteristic of that of the phylum Medusae. And based on these assays used, these host defense peptides display antimicrobial, immunomodulatory, anti-tumor, anti-cancer, as well as insulin-releasing properties. So this just goes to show some of the properties of these host defense peptides: anti-parasitic, hemolytic, neuroactive, and antiviral. So the overall approach is selecting a frog species of interest for which the relevant permits, UE ethics, wildlife collection permits were acquired to collect their skin secretions, to handle that material in terms of partial purification of their crude skin secretions, isolation and purification of these peptides by HPLC. And these isolated peptides are then subjected to structural elucidation, synthesis, and biological testing. So alternatively, if frog collection is not feasible because some persons are very afraid of frogs, they are fearful, they don't like how they look or they interact with them, you can start at a different step, perhaps at synthesis of analogs or even replicates. So overall, most steps are feasible starting points for which ultimately will contribute to the development of therapeutic agents. So over my years doing my program, I did sampling throughout the country of Trinidad and Tobago. So in Tobago, Lansformy area for the endemic Manophrine almone. I then observed in Trinidad the endemic Manophrine trinitatis in the northern range, Mount St. Benedict, eastern part of Trinidad, Tamana Caves, South Trinidad for frog called Lithobates palmeeps, and ultimately in 𝐿𝐼𝐼, the Leptodactyla species in Silarum and Nesiotis, which I will highlight today. So exploring Trinidad and Tobago, I looked at Lansformy in Tobago, its forested areas, Mount St. Benedict, a lovely view from the northern range, and Tamana Caves, and ultimately here at 𝐿𝐼𝐼. So 𝐿𝐼𝐼 is known for its biodiversity, which is the closest point to the South American mainland. And this photo was taken when I sampled during the dry season. So we noticed that there are charred earth and the shrubbery is gone, and most of this life is located at the canal's edge or in the canal itself. So the frogs were collected alongside the canal, and we also noticed the displaced spectacled caimans that were found in this canal because the carcass swamp itself has been dried up at that time. So frog skin composition highlights two glands, which is the mucus gland as well as the granular gland. So the mucus gland is responsible for the storage and the release of mucus, and the granular gland is responsible for the storage and the release of host defense peptide granules. So the release of host defense peptides in the skin secretions involve a chemical we use called norepinephrine. So it's a chemical like adrenaline, which takes advantage of a natural process of stimulation, releasing the host defense peptide granules through a duct. And this method is considered to be humane. The frogs are monitored, and then they are released into the environment unharmed after a timed observation. So the isolation and purification of these host defense peptides by HPLC highlights that a frog would have a characteristic profile for skin secretions that act as a fingerprint due to genetic encoding. So here is an overlap of the two chromatograms for 𝐿 and Nesiota. So the chromatograms themselves display a lot of material where we will carry out a series of sequential purification, which means a change in chromatography columns, stationary phases, mobile phases, ultimately leading to isolation and purification of pure peptides that will be used for characterization. So a bit more on the previous works done on the leptodactylids. The peptide family ocelatins are characteristic for all leptodactylus frogs, as reported by Nascimento et al. In 2004. So ocelatins generally display weak antimicrobial activity, but are more active against gram-negative microbes. So with the confirmation of ocelatins from both frogs, nomenclature was proposed and accepted by Professor John Michael Conlon, which states the peptide family, peptide number, as well as the species prefix. So here are 5 peptides that were isolated from L. insularum and 4 peptides isolated from L. nesiota. So based on these, 4 peptides were selected based on their physiochemical parameters for activity to then be tested for cytotoxicity as well as antimicrobial activity. So here am I conducting one of the multiple antimicrobial assays. So 4 synthetic replicates were used to determine the MICs against multiple gram-positive and gram-negative microbes. And here is a staining procedure where I confirm the morphology of the microbes, as well as colony isolation via plating. I also looked at the hemolytic effects, meaning the cytotoxicity of it, against mouse erythrocytes. So in an overall summary, I did work with 2 leptodactylus frogs, which confirmed the presence of the ocelatin peptide family. 9 novel peptides were isolated and characterized. The antimicrobial and cytotoxicity assays were performed using synthetic replicates. A broad spectrum antimicrobial ocelatin was isolated from the skin secretions of L. nesiota, which ultimately led to the publication in the Journal of Antibiotics and a special issue as well. So the contributions ultimately gave to biodiversity, where I explored the local biodiversity as a total of 5 frogs were studied as part of my MPhil research. In contribution to scientific literature, 9 novel peptides were isolated and characterized from the secretions of 2 frogs in Trinidad. Development of therapeutic agents, analogs of the most potent ocelatin were generated, and studies are underway to determine their insulin-releasing and antimicrobial activities. In terms of conservation efforts, I engaged local herpetologists, members of the West Indian herping, as well as DLS staff. Ethics and wildlife permits were obtained in order to work with these frog species nationwide. Sustainable, safe, and humane sampling collection with the release of these frogs back into their habitat, and to make sure that the habitats are to be preserved, to ensure that this resource is available. So acknowledgements to my supervisor, co-supervisor, co-authors, the wildlife section, as well as members of the West Indian Herping Renadillo 𝐿𝐞𝐢𝐼 research group in Ireland, members of the microbiology research group, my postgraduate colleagues, as well as colleagues of the Department of Life Sciences and Chemistry. The funding for this project is listed here. And my question to you all would be, list 5 properties of these host defense peptides. So you all can post it in the chat, or we can leave that for the question and answer segment. And thank you and happy Earth Day.
Mr. Baron, thank you so much for your presentation today. So I have one question for you. As an MPhil candidate in the Department of Life Sciences, what should prospective MPhil candidates know about the program before deciding to do an MPhil? And how can they succeed at this academic level with regards to their research?
Well, I can say you can prepare a checklist, right? So you need to select a program that is suitable for you, because not all programs will highlight your skill or allow you to develop. Have a can-do attitude. So you need to try to stay at the top of things and have a passion for what you do. Prepare for ups and downs, because there will be highlights and lows of your program and perhaps your career there as well. Ensure provisions are done in a timely manner to get work done. Be proactive and conscious, as well as communicate effectively with your academic advisors, supervisors, because they are the ones that will keep you on the same page and provide guidance to you. And most importantly, have fun, be serious, and make meaningful connections.
Thank you so much. As an undergraduate student myself, I appreciate so much having advice given from a successful postgrad student. And I'm sure all the other undergraduate students thinking about postgrad studies watching today are very appreciative as well. So thank you again.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we'll now move on to a brief Q&A session. These questions can be answered by any of our 4 speakers thus far. So firstly, given that today is Earth Day, what would you like people to be mindful of today and always? So anyone can take it. Yes, Mr. Asif.
So the thing that I would like everyone to be mindful of today and always is that individual action counts and it matters, right? So I don't want you to take for granted, especially in something as massive as climate change, that it's a problem that could only be solved by big corporations or companies. The actions that we take, not just in reducing our footprint, but even in advocating, protesting, supporting, doing research, all of our actions all add up, right? Every drop adds to the river. So I would, my advice is definitely always remember that every step is a step in the right direction and every action counts.
Thank you. That's some really good advice.
So for our second question, which again, as Nishali said, anybody is free to answer. What advice or tips would you give persons interested in or currently pursuing a program in life sciences?
I would say that you need to stay focused, because you would get distracted with life, friends, and even in academia. And remember, it's only for a time for learning to improve yourself, and it will pay off in the long run.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think you would know best since you went through UU as well, not only at the undergraduate, but the postgraduate level as well. So thank you so much. Does anybody else want to answer? Or before we move on to the next question?
Okay, we could probably take it to the next question then. So we have one last question before we get into the audience questions. So what would you say is the most exciting part of what you do professionally? So I think this could be general for everyone, so yeah. All right, Dr. Kanhai, you go. I see your camera on.
Yes, I mean, undoubtedly, anybody could imagine that being out in the field for me is definitely exciting. That's one of the best parts of what I do. But I think the other big part, an exciting part of what I do is my interaction with young people. Because every year, every class, we get a different cohort of people, they make you think about things that maybe you've never thought about before. They're the ones that have ideas of how to do things differently. And yeah, so I'll just leave it at those two things. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other takers? Okay, yes, Ms. Tassi. You muted.
Without a doubt, one of my favorite things about what I do is the diversity of experiences that we get to have. We get to work on projects across all different sectors at all different scales in all different countries, and we get to work with really, really exciting teams. So one of the best things about being in consulting is that you always get to see new problems, new challenges, and meet new people.
Thank you. And Dr. Rampassad, anything from you? Okay, Javon, you go.
So what's the most exciting thing I do professionally? I'm a demonstrator in the Department of Life Sciences, but I also take being a postgraduate student to be a professional, a profession. So it's like interaction with new people, experiencing various points of views, field trips collecting frogs, as well as the unknowing results of conducting an experiment. So I think those are some of the most exciting things that I do professionally. So yeah.
Okay, great. So we have some audience questions. I think there are about a couple, and one of them is directed to Dr. Kanhai. So we always hear that networking is important, but at times it can seem very intimidating. Can you give us some advice on this?
Sure. Okay, so when I speak about networking, I'm not talking about, social gatherings per se, although that, you can do networking in those settings as well. But I'm speaking about, getting involved in different types of programs, whether that's a workshop, whether that is through a course you're doing. You can, as Ryan said, you can build meaningful relationships with people in those settings. So if you are not the social butterfly, okay, some people build networks that way, but you can build meaningful professional networks by getting yourselves involved in, different groups, working with an NGO, for instance. That's how I started building some of my networks right after while I was in university, and then when I immediately left university for my first job. So those are some of the ways in which I think we can, people who feel intimidated by networking, that's how they can start. Yeah.
That is very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so I see we received a second question as well. Someone said, so everyone seems to be focusing on the direct effects like greenhouse gases and such, but we don't hear much about the destruction of the ozone layer by constant transport of interplanetary vehicles. In fact, we're doing it for fun now. What's your opinion on that? Any speaker could take it thus far.
I guess I'll take that one. Yeah. So so interplanetary travel, right? So things like spaceships, when you burn rocket fuel, right? The burning of the gases as it goes up, you get some ozone depleting substances, right? But ozone depleting substances, I believe, are not only coming from the rocket fuel, right? Probably the biggest source of it comes from our refrigeration and air conditioning and cooling equipment that we use, because we use a lot of HFCs and ozone depleting substances in that, right? So at the international level, what you find is we have multilateral environmental agreements, in this case specifically the Montreal Protocol and the Kigali Amendments, which deal with doing that. So in terms of the fight of, if you look at the issue, think about it as a pie chart, right? in terms of ozone depletion coming from spaceship and space travel, that's probably a very small slice compared to the refrigerations and the air conditions and all of the other things that we have going on, right? So I think that if we have to tackle a problem, and yes, tackling the ozone is a problem, ozone depletion is a problem we need to tackle. You sort of kind of go after the mountain first, the elephants in the room, and I'll just give you some local context for that, right? So Trinidad and Tobago, we have a very strong ozone unit at the Ministry of Planning, and we also have what we have called our National Cooling Policy 2020, which speaks to how Trinidad and Tobago is going to phase out ozone depleting substances in our refrigeration and air conditioning sector. And in addition to doing that, because some of the ozone depleting substances are also greenhouse gases, it's expected by 2030, if we successfully implement everything in the cooling strategy, that we would also abate, I think, about 600,000 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent as well. So you could tackle both. You don't have to just worry about spaceships and the ozone. You know, they would go hand in hand. Everything in the environment is interconnected. I'm sure all students of life sciences understand and appreciate that. And yeah, that's my take on it. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we have one more question for our biochem lecturer or postgrad student. What are some opportunities for graduating biochemistry students to gain experience? Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
So Dr. Rampassad will take it. So what are some opportunities for graduating biochemistry students to gain experience? So given the fact that you're graduating, that means you're in the process of either your final semester, you may be interested in a project within the department, or you may look for some type of, you know, something to get your hands on, right? Because based on the programs, you actually do learn a wealth of information across the board from different aspects of science, biochemistry, even chemistry. And to use those skills that you have, you could look for maybe a part-time job. There are certain industries that do look for interns, whether it be for a medical laboratory, maybe one of those NGOs, as Dr. Kanhai said. Those are good sources in which you could get this practical experience, because you'll be fresh out of university soon. And usually what employers would tell you is that you don't have the experience. Also, there is the on-the-job training program that is guided towards graduates as well. You're fresh out of university, you're looking for some type of internship, you have a particular skill set which you have developed or would like to develop. There are various aspects within the department as well. We can approach a potential supervisor, potential project. And with that now, you'll be able to have some type of experience. I mean, to be kind of honest, there are a lot of things that we would do to gain experience and other skills one would learn, not just because you're graduating biochemistry or chemistry or even a degree from life sciences. There are other aspects you would need to develop to get an overall or general skill set that can be applicable into other fields as well.
All right, thank you so much for that. I feel like a lot of us biochem students would definitely benefit from that. Dr. Rampassad, do you have anything to add to this? Okay, if not, then we can move on to our next segment.
Okay, so thank you once again to all our speakers thus far for taking time to speak with us today and answer all our questions. For our next portion of the event, we'll be featuring environmental organizations that you as students can become involved in order to take a more direct role in preserving the natural environment. So first of all, we'll be featuring the UWI Biological Society, which is an environmental conservation organization based right here at the St. Augustine campus. The society is one of the most long-standing UWI-affiliated clubs, and throughout the years have worked hard to uphold their watchwords of education, restoration, and preservation. For the 2021-2022 academic year, I was privileged to serve as the Vice President of the Society, and today I have two of my executive members, Ms. Nicola Mohammed, who is our Project Manager, and Ms. Sai Sonali Anmol Singh, who is our Secretary, who will be helping me present today. So to reiterate, we are an environmental conservation organization based at UWI St. Augustine, and right now our membership consists mainly of students and staff, but it is open to any person that is interested in protecting the environment. In images shown on this slide, you'll see some of our members conducting activities such as beach cleanups, hikes, sustainability drives, and tree replanting. Also on the top right, you'll see one of our members interacting with Sunshine, who is an albino bull python and an animal ambassador. So here's a brief history of the UWI Biological Society. The society was actually founded in 1968 by Emeritus Professor Julian Duncan under the name of the Natural History Society. But this was changed to the UWI Biological Society in 1987. The society went on to become the first registered NGO to exist at the time on the UWI St. Augustine campus, and throughout the years, the executive team were responsible for many forms of conservation work around Trinidad and Tobago. The work of the society has earned awards such as the Greenleaf Award from the AMA for their work on building awareness through environmentally based conservation endeavors, such as turtle patrols and recycling initiatives. Additionally, in October 1998, we were also presented with an award by UWI for our contribution to the promotion of campus life and local environmental awareness. As a society, we have also been shown to be consistently proficient throughout the years in the Nature Seekers annual sand turtle competition, which you will see on the left. So here's a list of some of our face-to-face activities that we would frequently conduct prior to the pandemic. These activities would provide our members with an interactive and meaningful way of conducting conservation, as well as experiencing how beautiful our natural environment is. For instance, the spider shown here was found by one of our members while on a nature walk. Furthermore, what we would often do is have animal ambassadors come to campus where you can directly interact with them. Animal ambassadors, such as the rainbow boa, shown on the top right, are tame animals that live permanently at rehabilitation centers or zoos. And they would be shown to and interact with the public in order to educate people about the species and also to raise awareness regarding their habitat loss and the need for protection. Usually, you'd only see pictures of these animals, but to see them in real life and interact with them, it really allows you to develop a greater appreciation for them as a whole. These animals, they are the product of millions of years of evolution, and their roles to their respective ecosystems are invaluable. Preserving their habitats and their population numbers is not only vital for their survival, but for ours as well. As humans, we would often destabilize the natural environment for so many of our activities, and we often fail to realize that the consequences of doing so tend to ripple back and affect us. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have a high degree of biodiversity, which is one of the reasons why conservational activities and environmentally based education are of great importance to foster in our country. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the UWI Biological Society was unable to engage in most of these face-to-face activities. However, like all life on Earth, we adapt.
The pandemic did not stop us from having events and keeping in line with our watchwords of education, restoration, and preservation. However, in this time, greater emphasis was placed on the educational aspect as there were limited opportunities for face-to-face activities. So we held lots of fun and exciting events online. From our first spoken word event called Nature Speaks, where we had 5 amazing participants who performed an environmentally based spoken word piece. This event was done in collaboration with the 2 Cents movement, who also sponsored prizes, and it allowed us to facilitate engagement with our members even in an online setting. We also took part in Guildfest 2021 in collaboration with TT Spark and Chemists in Action to play Jeopardy! Natural Sciences Edition with attendees via Discord. Additionally, the Society, in collaboration with the FSC Student Council, 𝐂𝐚𝐿 Environmental Club, and Mona Biology Students Association, hosted the Regional Life Sciences Interclubbing event, which highlighted the environmental and biologically associated work being done by the 3 regional clubs from the different UWI campuses. This year, we also took part in the Women in STEM event, which was a collaboratory event with various FSC clubs, such as UWI Chemists in Action, UWI Actuarial Science Club, SUMS, Stargazers, and TT Spark, where we highlighted the struggles women faced, as well as their countless contributions
in the field of life sciences. In this time, we also collaborated with 𝐂𝐚𝐫 to create an article for their World Life Wildlife series in 2021. Our article was titled The Marvelous and Multifaceted Forests of the Caribbean, where we detail fascinating facts about the tropical forests within the Caribbean. We continued our general meetings in an online setting where the executive works to prepare presentations to introduce our members to our team for the semester, as well as sub-teams which would revolve around a pertinent environmental topic. The first was based around the theme of the story of sensitive species. Each executive member presented an informative piece on different environmentally sensitive species of animals. The second was based on the effects of agricultural species on the environment. This event explored industrial processes involved in cultivating agricultural produce and its effects on the environment. We also explored species with restoration power, where we highlighted the contributions of living organisms towards environmental restoration with a focus on microbial bioremediation. This included discussions on the role of fungi in oil degradation, probiotic bacteria in the health of coral reefs, and fungi in soil health. In the new year, our general meeting for January was based on ecotourism, where we discussed the benefits, drawbacks, as well as solutions on how we can create a sustainable tourism. This was then followed by the topic of the pet trade, which has led to the endangerment and extirpation of various animal species, where they are treated as commodities rather than living beings. It can also cause detrimental implications and impacts on the environment, humans, and the animals themselves. We also had our conservation conversations, which involved us inviting a guest speaker who is an expert in their field to educate our members about aspects about the natural world and our relationship with it. These meetings align with our general meetings and the topics we had for particular months. First, we had Mr. Renoir August, former president of the Field Naturalist Club, who specializes in amphibians. He provided an informative presentation based on frogs for our first conservation conversation. This is followed by Mr. Sheldon Ramatoir, a microbiology research officer, and he presented on bioremediation of oil spills, where the restoration power of bacteria and fungi can reduce the impact of oil pollution. Then we have Mrs. 𝐂𝐚𝐿 Carter-Guy, the assistant to the advisor for the tourism policy in the Ministry of Tourism, and she presented and discussed the positives and negatives of ecotourism. Lastly, we had Ms. Lauren Ali, co-manager of Nurture Nature campaign, and her presentation focused on the impacts of the pet wildlife trade.
Okay, so there are many benefits that come with being a member of the 𝐬𝐸 Biological Society. Our face-to-face and virtual activities allow for us to achieve our watchwords of education, restoration, and preservation regarding the natural environment, which, as mentioned, is of utmost importance. And through this, our members can adopt an active role in conservation and foster awareness about environmental issues. The society also acts as a point of social connectedness. And what this means is that from attending our meetings and events, and from being a part of our group chats and emailing list, registered members have the opportunity to connect and network with each other, and even seek opportunities and connections beyond what we can directly offer. Linked to this, we are always eager to share and distribute opportunities that we find interesting, and our members hence have that chance to join and participate in events, research, and other capacity building opportunities that can help develop their interests, hobbies, academics, and potentially their careers. Further to this, there is the advantage of experience and knowledge. Whether our events are virtual or in person and in the field, our meetings, events, and networks all foster awareness, scientific literacy, environmentalism, appreciation, and advocacy. Now, joining as an executive member or even a committee member presents the added benefit of developing skills surrounding responsibility. When you join as an executive member, there is much more emphasis and focus surrounding the improvement of your communication skills and your ability to work in groups. Moreover, executive membership builds public speaking skills, engagement, and academic writing ability, in that it allows members to be balanced and versed in both. Lastly, as it pertains to academic and professional benefits, membership again exposes persons in these positions to a range of environmental topics. And more to this, based on your specific position, you might have the additional opportunity to improve your individual interests and technical skills, such as familiarity with navigating virtual platforms, graphic design, research, event planning, and web design and IT.
So how could you get involved? So firstly, you could follow us on all our social media platforms as shown on this slide to keep up to date with our conservation conversations, general meetings, and events. You could also share our content to your social media accounts in order to increase the visibility of the society. Also, be sure to join our conservation conversations, general meetings, and events to learn about our team for the month and to participate in our events. Also, be sure to fill out our membership form. Anybody is eligible to join as a member in order to obtain our emails about climate justice opportunities or events and general meetings, as well as other related opportunities by different environmental organizations. Lastly, you can join the executive team. Once you are eligible to join the executive team once you are a current UWI student and a registered member to the society. Applications for the executive team are actually now open for the 2022-2023 academic year. And details regarding that are posted on our Instagram and Facebook. But if you have questions, feel free to contact us via our email or any of our platforms shown on the site. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. We look forward to seeing all of you join us at the UWI Biological Society. The UWI Biological Society encompasses two fields of life sciences, that being environmental science and biology. However, if you're a little bit more interested in the field of biochemistry, there's now the Biochemistry Society that is available for you to join. I'll now pass you on to Mr. Javon Philip.
Hi everyone, so let's keep this a bit brief because we don't have much time here. Our newly appointed club is the Biochemistry Society. So this club will take a different thing to the Biological Society as seen just now. So taken from Dr. Rampassad's and also Mr. Baron's presentations, biochemistry and molecular biology can be seen to impact a lot of different aspects in our Earth, not only from the environment, but also in studying plants and animals and seeing how they help medicinally with regard to conservation, as well as everything else. So not only in the postgrad level, but also in the undergrad level and everywhere else, you can join just from the Instagram and the registration link is seen below as well. But why biochemistry? Please. Right. Yeah, but why biochemistry? Because it has aspects everywhere, not only health and medicine, but agriculture, biotechnology, education and research. As Mr. Baron pointed out, we have opportunities everywhere. So come discover what you can do, because we will be showcasing all that you can, not only undergraduates, but also for graduates, and even if you're looking for a job. We will try to help as much as we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, UWI Biological Society, as well as the Biochemistry Society. We will now move on to our next organization, West Indian Herping. West Indian Herping is an organization dedicated to the long-term preservation of reptiles and amphibians of the West Indies through education, ecotourism, photography, and research. Their goal is to sustainably promote conservation of the natural world as a whole, but with specific attention being paid to increasing awareness and fascination among fellow human beings towards some of the most feared, misunderstood, and understudied animals. Apart from the petofauna, they also actively engage in the research of other wildlife such as moths, arachnids, fish, and mammals. Due to their unconventional methods of nocturnal expeditions and camps in the forests of Trinidad and Tobago, and thus the West Indies, they have become privy to natural behaviors of many nocturnal animals. This has also led them to discovery of a number of new species for the island. So welcome, West Indian Herping.
Hello everyone. Hi. Okay, so my name is 𝐂𝐚𝐿𝐼 and I'm the co-founder of West Indian Herping, and with me is Shaquille George and Zachariah Ali and Raina Dale. They will be joining us and talking with me as well. So let me share my screen. Okay. All right. So what is West Indian Helping? Just to reiterate, we're an organization that dedicates ourselves to the long-term preservation of reptiles and amphibians. So reptiles and amphibians are our first love. That is what got us started. However, we expanded and we started doing research of other wildlife as well. So everyone in our group has their own niche to say. So yes, we focus on reptiles and amphibians. However, everyone have their little thing to decide that they focus on as well. So just to introduce, before we go on to anything, just to introduce ourselves. So my name is 𝐿𝐤𝐼 again. I have a biology degree. I studied at USC. I also actively engage in rehabbing wildlife. I took a pause on that because it's very tedious and we have a lot going on. And 𝐭𝐚𝐫𝐿, he focuses on spiders, and Zach focuses on ocelots, while Raina focuses on moths. Right? So why reptiles and amphibians? So reptiles and amphibians, as everyone knows, is the most underappreciated vertebrates in the world. A lot of people are afraid of them. They think they're dangerous, they think they're scary. However, they are very important to us and the environment. So that is what we focus on mainly. George could join us now and continue.
Hi, that's a good day. Are you hearing me?
A little.
Okay. So hi, my name is 𝐿𝐤𝐼, as 𝐿𝐤𝐼 introduced, and we are from West Indian Helping Organization. As she already said, we focus on the study of reptiles and amphibians, but we're not just limited to reptiles and amphibians. So I'd just like to introduce a few projects that we're currently working on. One such project is the ocelot research project that's currently being conducted in the northern range of Trinidad and Tobago. Here you can see some of the photographs that we've captured of a few ocelots. What's really exciting about this project is that to date, and this is something that we're proud that that we can boast about, is that this has been the longest ongoing camera trapping project on the island to date. This project has been ongoing for a little over a year now, and the whole idea is we want to be able to determine the population density of ocelots in the northern range. Because this project has been going on or have been going on for over a year, what that means now is we can compare data with respect to the wet and dry season, which is pretty cool. It also means that we can look at the lunar activity of these animals and determine how these animals behave with respect to different moon phases, temperature, time of day, time of year, etc. Another such project that we're currently engaged in, well, this project doesn't actually have a title, but we refer to it as the Spider Project. What it is we're currently partnered with a Brazilian research center, we're attempting to identify and conduct further research on a few spider species here in Trinidad. As it pertains to spiders, in Trinidad and Tobago, spiders are very much understudied. Though we must give kudos to the late Dr. Sulal, because I consider her to be the pioneer of all things spiders with respect to Trinidad and Tobago, and by extension the island. But we're also engaged in that aspect of research. Again, because of our methodology of going out into the forest, spend extended time periods out in the forest, searching for reptiles and amphibians, we're privy to a lot of natural behavior of these animals. One such, because of this, we've also been able to identify quite a few number of moth species on the island. As you see on the slide, this is a recent publication of us talking about how night walks generated unexpected new observations for Trinidad with respect to moths. Again, because of our methodology of going into the forest at night, looking for animals and stuff like that, we actually came across a spider of the Sparacidae family feeding on fermenting food. What's exciting about this is that spiders are predominantly thought of as being carnivores or insectivores or whatever you want to class it as. But here it is, we have a spider feeding on fermenting food. That was pretty mind-blowing. We later discovered that the spider was actually of the oleo species, most likely 𝐿 because it's the only described species on the island thus far. And actually, it'd be actually for fun facts, spiders, because there are lots of documented observations of spiders now feeding on some type of plant-based product. This whole idea of spiders predominantly being carnivores, it might be something to look into, because as we've now learned that there's over 60 species of spiders across 10, I believe, are one of more families that are actually engaged in this behavior of phytography, which is basically feeding on some plant-based diet. So we at West Indian Open, we're out there, we're doing our thing, we're spending extended period of time in the forest, and it's something that you truly enjoy. You can reach us if you want, if you're going to contact us. You can reach us if you want at any of the following handles: Instagram at West Indian Open, Facebook West Indian Open. You can email us at westindianopen@gmail.com. That's our number there, 761-8359.
Just to add to what George has been saying, we also do tours. We started doing tours recently. So there are a number of ways to get involved with us as well. We started doing public night tours. That is going out into the forest at night looking for wildlife, looking for herbs, looking for any creatures that come out at night. We have private and public tours. We also have private and public wildlife expeditions. That's where you go out and you stay for like a night, 2 nights, however long you want. And this actually allows a lot of people to face their fears, because a lot of people will have fears about something. And when you come out with us, we basically we don't force you to do anything. We educate you, we show you how these animals are really harmless if you just leave them alone. And a lot of people has changed their minds on what animal they once perceived as threatening, and they changed their mind, and now they're like, okay, these animals are really not that bad. I have no problem with this. I will not kill them anymore, or I will leave them to move around my house. It's not a problem. So these night tours actually is what also helps us fund our research, because this is not really a money-making thing. This is out of our passion for wildlife. And these tours actually help a lot to allow us to continue what we do. Apart from that, we also would like to have some workshops. However, that hasn't started yet. but in time, we will have workshops for people to attend. It's unfortunate that we had this meeting today because we would have been able to invite you guys to come on our ending of our ocelot project because it's finishing today. So we have to go into the forest tonight to remove all of the camera traps we have set out. And that will be the end of the project. And then we will assess all the data we collected and return the cameras to EMA. Right, so as George said, to contact us, you can message us on WhatsApp, Facebook, email us, Instagram. We always are open to responding to anyone. Anyone wants to get involved in anything, just message us and we will try to assist you as best as we can. And that is it.
All right, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. What you'll do is truly incredible. I'm sure you'll see some of us there at your future events, for sure. Me, count me in. We will now move on to our final organization for today, the Points Bay Wildfire Trust. So the Points Bay Wildfire Trust is a national non-profit organization not subsidized by one corporation, government body, or group. It is an inland freshwater wetland habitat encompassing approximately 30 hectares and 2 lakes, uniquely situated within a large petrochemical complex, Heritage Petroleum Company Limited. The trust is actively involved in research and captive breeding of endangered waterfowl and other wetland birds for release and reintroduction into natural wildlife areas. Environmental education is central to the work of the trust, with exceptional out-of-the-classroom activities for students, providing general and specific tours which are adapted to suit the students' needs and the subjects being taught in school. So today we have Ms. West on behalf of the Wildfire Trust. So Ms. West, welcome. You can take it away.
Okay, thank you for having me. Happy Earth Day to everyone. So let me just share my screen. All right, let me know if you're seeing.
Not yet, but yeah, I believe we are now, yes.
So Nishali gave a very good introduction to the Wildfire Trust. As you can see in the overview here, this is what the trust looks overhead. We have 74 acres of land and we have 2 lakes within the petrochemical complex, Heritage Petroleum Company Limited. Our work is primarily to breed endangered wetland birds. So as she said before, we are a national non-profit volunteer organization and we work with different organizations, both NGOs and corporate bodies to do our projects, right? So here are some views that you can get from the trust, right? So we are actively involved in research and captive breeding of endangered waterfowl and wetland birds for release and reintroduction into natural wetland areas. So these are some of the species that we would work with. It is a peaceful haven where members and visitors can relax. You can walk the trails. So we have forest walk. It's one of our interpretive trails. So you can actually learn about local forest trees. We have fairy woods, and then we have the Devil's Ear Trail, which may seem intimidating to some, but it's really named after the tree. So you can see the little seed pod in the corner there. They say it looks like the devil's ear, but the idea is to teach about the linkages between these natural habitats and the wildlife and ourselves, right? Now, the main building of the trust, which we call the Learning Center, it houses a Amerindian display and a shell collection. These are local artifacts, local shells found throughout Trinidad and Tobago, and it's all about learning about our past, right? Now, environmental education is the core of our work, in addition to the breeding of these endangered species of birds. And you would see since 1979, right, the trust initiated environmental education, audiovisual outreach programs, and it was one of the first to be taken to primary schools and secondary schools throughout Trinidad and Tobago, Right, so our out of the classroom approach to teaching, we have different nature walks that I get from preschool all the way up to tertiary level. We do labs, aquatic labs, leaf labs, feather labs. We do quadrat and transect sampling. I believe UE Freshwater, they also come and do their sampling at the trust. Right? Now, another part of our work is that we try to be all-encompassing. We want to include everybody. So we do have a special program, an environmental therapy program, where we include the differently abled, right? So for persons who may be visually impaired, the program is actually called touch taste. So they actually get to experience nature through their other senses. All right, so just a little background of the trust. We were actually started in 1966 by Richard Dick Dean and John Cambridge. At the time, they only had one lake and about 3 acres of land. And it branched out in the need of our wild ducks were actually being hunted or over-hunted to the point that some of them were locally extirpated. Now in 1977, Miss Molly Gaskin became involved, and she decided to take her audiovisual education programs for herself to schools and community groups. And by 78, 79, she was voted as the president of the Point of View Wildfire Trust. So she revamped not only the breeding program, but also the environmental education program, right? Under this leadership, we were able to acquire 60 more acres of land and another lake to do our work. Okay. So just to run through a timeline of what the trust has been able to accomplish, if you look at 1981, the very first environmental education curriculum. So mainly the things that you learn in school today from primary school coming all the way up was introduced by Miss Molly Gaskin to the Ministry of Education at the time. And then she went on to do photographic exhibitions, showing off the nature and wildlife, local wildlife of Trinidad and Tobago, right? So in 1984, there's where the lobbying became more aggressive. In terms of conservation, they were part of the lobbying for the government to sign CITES, which is the Convention of the Prevention of International Trade in Endangered Species. By 85, they started doing turtle patrols at Matura Beach. So where they saw the need for conservation for our leatherback turtles from hunting and poaching, right? In 1986, we also initiated and was able to successfully get the protection of one of our national birds, the scarlet ibis, which is a bird that we also breed for release here at the Wildfire Trust. Right? So you would have seen the picture of our shell collection. We were able to acquire that in 1987. And one of the things that we're also very proud of is the 2-year hunting moratorium that was achieved to help the wildlife of Trinidad and Tobago regenerate themselves. And the addition of the Amerindian display that we have. In 1989 and 1990, the trust initiated the successful lobbying of the restoration for the Mokrapo foreshore wetlands. Now, through this work and working with other NGOs, with the organization of COPE was founded, and Ms. Gaskin and Ms. Shepard, who's the president and vice president of the trust, were also founding members of COPE. In 93, we would have produced a document. It's called A Collection of Vocational Papers. It's a book that's used by schools and teachers to help teach and get background information for the environment and for students. We also had coloring sheets. And in 93 as well, here's where you would see we attained, or we lobbied and we fought for the Nariva Swamp, which is one of our biggest wetland areas in Trinidad, to be protected by the Ramsar Convention. So this is where the government agreed to sign the Ramsar Convention and made the New River Swamp our first Ramsar site. Right? In 1994, the Pointe-a-Pierre Wildfire Trust received the Hummingbird Gold Medal for the work that it done and the service to the country. These are medals that were also given to Ms. Gaskin and Ms. Shepherd in years after. And in 95, the trust, in conjunction with other non-governmental bodies, was able to coordinate a visit by the Greenpeace sailing ship, the Rainbow Warrior. And this was to lobby to stop the shipment of plutonium through the Caribbean Sea. And this was something that they were able to achieve as well. Following the work that they did with the leatherback turtles, we also were able to publish one of our books, The Sea Turtles and Their Habitats. This is again to show the importance of these animals and the need for the conservation and protection of them. Right. And in 97, you would see Ms. Gaskin was able to be awarded as one of 25 women globally for her work through the environment, right? We eventually joined the internet stage. We had our website launched, and in 2001, we commissioned, to aid with our special needs program, we commissioned our boardwalk, which is one, if not in the country, in the region, to help with our program for the differently abled, right? In 2004, we also opened our nature retreat, Patria Place, and some of you may know the restaurant Freebird. It's a farm-to-table concept restaurant where we can host retreats, seminars, corporate workshops, so we can facilitate groups that would like to visit, yeah? Right, now 2006, the Pointe-a-Pierre Wildfire Trust was honored by the Hilton. And in 2016, jumping ahead a little bit, we celebrated our 50th anniversary, which is a milestone. We're actually 56 years old now, right? So we've been doing this a very long time. In 2019, we were very happy and very proud to say that we were listed as a heritage site by the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. So coming down to what some of you all are wondering, opportunities for you in conservation and environmental organizations. The first thing that we often, we are a volunteer organization. So you have the opportunity, being life science students, you can come and volunteer with us, learn the work that we do, get active in the environment and conservation. We also have internship programs. Aviculture, now again, we breed for release endangered wetland birds. We also do rehabilitation of injured birds and displaced birds. So that is something that you can also learn about, right? Environmental education, again, this is where we push most of our work, and we reach out to the schools, to the communities, anybody who would listen and would be interested. So you can learn and get involved with that. And of course, research, a lot of you will have projects coming up. We do facilitate you having to do your research projects, just have to reach out to us. If you're interested, even for a hobby, photography, that's also great. Wildlife and natural environment photography is becoming very big right now. Again, conservation, policy and planning. So you would have seen all the lobbying work that we would have done throughout the years. And of course, global networking. The Pointe-a-Pierre Wildfire Trust is the second oldest organization of its kind in the world. And we are probably the only one located where we are inside an industrial complex and able to do our environmental work and conservation work within this cohabitation with an industry. Yeah, so thank you.
Great, thank you for that informative presentation, Ms. West. I think all of us that haven't been to the trust yet would definitely be trying to visit soon. So thank you once again.
No problem.
Okay, so now we'll move on to a quick game session where 2 lucky winners will be given prizes if they are the first to answer these 2 questions, right?
Okay, and these prizes are some good prizes, right? So you're gonna want to answer, you should try this. So here's our first question, how fast can you type? who can tell us the names of all the speakers and environmental organizations that we had present today? How fast can you type it? So we'll give you all like 10 seconds and then we can move on and we'll select the winners afterwards. All right, we'll pick. So Amy.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So for the second question, which I may have already answered earlier, FSC Student Council Life Sciences Day is an annual event. How many years thus far has there been an FSC Student Council Life Sciences Day?
All right, so I think we could move on from there.
Yeah, I see Nicola got my answer correct. It is 2 years. This is the second year that we've been having Life Sciences Day. So good job, Nicola. And I think Samaya got the first answer correct. Your question, Nishali.
I'm looking at it now. Technically, they both missed one thing. So try again. You're leaving out one thing.
Oh, okay. Yes, I see it. I see it.
One very important organization, a budding one. That's a hint.
I think Dr. McCasker has it.
That's a very big hint. Let's see. She does?
I think she hinted it. She hinted it.
Ah.
But nobody
All
got
right.
it.
Well, that's okay. We'll select
Oh, wait, look,
it.
somebody. I think somebody
yeah?
got it. I think somebody got it. Check the chat.
Ah, yes. Okay. Well, all of our winners for today's event will be contacted by the FSC Student Council, so you'll could look out for that, and will get your cute little prizes. I hope you'll like it.
So yes, congrats to all our winners thus far. You guys did such a great job, and even to those of you who didn't win, thanks for participating as well. So that brings us to the end of our event. Thank you once again to all our speakers for taking their time to talk with us today, and thank you to all of you who attended and stayed and participated. We appreciate it so much. We hope you enjoyed the session, and happy Earth Day once again.
Okay, so just to remind you all again, every single winner, we have noted them and we will contact you all and you'll be able to receive your prize like that. So a special thank you to the FSC Student Council who helped us make this event a big success. Always remember, be your Earth's keeper. Thank you everyone and have a really great evening.
All right, thank you for having us. Bye.
Thanks for being here.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for coming.
We really
You're
appreciate
Thanks very
it.
much, everybody. Take care.
You too.
Take care.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.